Against Wales. Ready, George?
Yeah, we should be live now. We should be live on Zoom at least. No, I just need the code that's just been texted to you. You should have had a code just text you. Yeah, I need a code that's just been texted to you for the YouTube. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I don't have access to the fair game 12. Just me personally.
Ready?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome along. It's fantastic to be here. My name is Adrian Goldberg. I've got a little bit of my background to tell you about briefly. In 1985, I launched Britain's first national football fanzine. It was called Off the Ball. There was a lot of concern at the time about football hooliganism. My concern as a fan was about the hooligans in the boardroom, people who were responsible for the likes of the Bradford City Fire. I campaigned for fans then, and I campaigned for fans since. I launched the first national radio show to campaign for fans' rights called Sport Shop on the old Radio 5, and I highlighted the links between football clubs and gambling ads targeted at children on my recent show for Five Live Next Game. I've just released my film, Keep the Upbeat, and Premier League Guild Football, playing on YouTube. So, never ended campaign for me. I'm just going to turn my volume down. But I'm delighted and proud to be part of this fantastic project. Putting pride back in machines, fair games and solutions. I'm going to first about it, like to introduce John Scales, ex-England, Wimbledon, Liverpool, and Spurs. John.
Yeah, thanks, David. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Plough Lane. A very special place for me. Great memories of my time with Wimbledon for 7 years, and really sort of, I think, the epitome of everything good about what football clubs stand for, what football supporters, fans stand for. And, like Adrian said, I'm very proud to be part of the Fair Game team. The effort over the last 6 months has been phenomenal. I've learned a great deal, I think, from my time working amongst such a great group of academics and experts, and everybody involved on behalf of the clubs, a unique set of clubs that have come together like-minded in their efforts to improve the game. I've made some notes. I just would rather sort of not drift off course too much, but I think today's about football being possibly so much better. And here today we're obviously going to set out those steps, how it can be a brighter, a fairer future. And the journey I said on the last 6 months, working with some great people, with those shared common goals and objectives, has sort of given me a perspective of the game. I was privileged to play football. Obviously, I was a professional footballer for 15 odd years, and you sort of operate in a bubble on a pedestal and everything else. And coming away from the game, I've always been involved in the commercial aspects of it, but really now the governance, the issues with fans, the issues with this European Super League that we saw, my interests have changed to wanting to give back, I suppose, and support those within the game who want to make it a better game. Obviously, there's a lot to celebrate about the game, both domestically and globally. We know that, but don't let those people kid you that the game isn't broken. It doesn't need change. I hear that so often. Just recently I went to a Premier League game and there were people in high authority who was sort of saying, you know, what on earth are you thinking about, you know, this regulator? You know, be careful what you wish for. Be careful, you know, about the distribution of revenues differently. You know, don't fix what's not broke. And I, you know, I had to say, look, everybody's telling us the game is broken. We've had this debate for years and years, decades. This is not new. European Super League, you know, epitomised the issues really fundamentally at stake, or amplified those issues for fans worried about the future of the game. So today we'll demonstrate how Fair Game has established detailed solutions through this comprehensive manifesto. It's the problems that are overwhelmingly acknowledged by fans across the country and those stakeholders within the game. Many of the country's leading experts, academics, and experienced football professionals have diligently studied, discussed, and often argued many of the points and topics concerned. I'd like to actually pay tribute to Niall, who's led the team brilliantly, and I think, you know, it's a chance for me to acknowledge that. I think on behalf of everybody who's been involved today, about the tireless work that Niall's done and led the team brilliantly. And this is a sort of pivotal moment for us, which we really want to sort of grasp the nettle. I was going to talk about the European Super League, but we know enough about that, you know, a moment where don't treat the communities with contempt. You know, these fans have lived and breathed and served football through countless generations, and they deserve that respect for that loyalty and the very essence of what the game is built on. Protecting the values of football is what's at stake here. You know, sport stands for so much in society. I've got two young girls currently in athletics and football, and my youngest playing for AFC Wimbledon Girls. And you know, the values that I want sport to teach them are exactly the values that I think all of us as parents, as fans, as custodians within football, stakeholders, want the next generations to learn from. So the game is not a tool to be used for those that seek to selfishly enrich themselves or disregard those values in sheer greed. It's about acknowledging and recognising that custodianship of these community assets, these football clubs that mean so much to so many. We know, of course, there'll always be, you know, many that seek to manipulate the system, but it's the job of those whose responsibility is to protect the game that have not done so appropriately. We need to hold them to account. We need to set in place a new approach, and that's really based squarely, I'm glad to say, on the carrot and sort of the stick. You know, valuable incentives for good governance, good behaviour, good leadership, but rules again, and a regulation that has teeth. Those rules need to be enforced. Give it in, somebody will take a mile. We've all experienced that within football across business, wherever we've been in life. The game needs that carrot and stick, and I think we've struck the right balance here. That's why we're here today, to provide that set of tools to re-establish the values, the principles, the rules that have to be adapted, embraced, and enforced by a better system, a fairer system, a fairer game. At the heart of it is a pragmatic and balanced approach underpinned by our expert group's unique skills and overriding mission to help improve the game on behalf of the Fair Game clubs. And that's who we speak on behalf of. These Fair Game clubs have come together like-minded, this drive, this desire to provide a better future for all clubs and all fans across the country. I think my message to those that can bring about change is it is time to act. You know, today is about a route to a positive change. The chance exists for the leaders within the game to make the game a better game that we all need. Tracy Crouch opened the door. I think if the government want a lasting legacy, then this really is the moment to be seized. And I think that's what I urge politicians listening in, politicians we've spoken to. We don't want the review to come out with great words and left on a dusty shelf just to be sat there. We want meaningful action. I think this is the moment that we will talk about here today. And a privilege to hand back to Adrian and to listen in to what we're going to present today.
John, thank you very much indeed. John Scales, this is, in my time as covering and following football, a unique initiative bringing together clubs, some fan-owned, some not, supporters, all love the game, that's why we're here, and politicians as well. And at 1 o'clock, we're going to be hearing from Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. Tell us a little bit more about their game. Let's hear now from Mark Cooper, Chief Executive and CEO of their game, and Christina Philippou, who's an expert on corruption.
Thank you very much. As John says, this has been a unique day. huge difference to us. And we are value driven. We believe that there is a potential future. We brought together some of the greatest minds, I think, in football to really create something that's fundamentally different and change football for good. If you look through the slides, these are our fair game clubs. Since then, as is the want of these things, and for our designer, just to annoy him, we've had a couple of clubs join in overnight. So Bath City's badge is not on there because they joined about 10 o'clock this morning, which was a bit annoying. But there you go. Thank you very much, Bath City. Very much late, but that's important. So we pick on to the next slide. Just what we're about. I think the big thing here is, it's our principles, and we're being focused on trying to be realistic. Our whole idea is to look at what the problems were, and we went away and spent 6 months developing those, to develop really good, strong, long-term solutions. So we are led by clubs, supported by experts, and backed by politicians.
So obviously we're all coming at it from various different angles. So what's really nice is that clubs on board, experts on board, we're all kind of looking at the same sort of sustainability, so our vision is simply one where every time we put on a shirt, what it stands for, and we're looking at traditions. This is forever, right? For our children and our children's children.
These are our 4 kind of key principles that we originally set ourselves up for. This is what we asked our clubs originally to sign up to believe in. And I'm delighted that I can look around this room now and I can see Exley, Maidstone, Lakeland, there's representatives of Wanderers, Chesterfield, lots of other clubs here, the City. I'm doubting his son. I apologise, Grimsby Town. I apologise for that. I've missed them. And know that on listening in, we've got representatives of every single one of our clubs, and there are several others that are interested in joining. We're also listening today. We really hope that you buy into these 4 key principles which we set out on our journey to make sure that that's embedded in football to go forward. So this is, for us, the key part of what we're trying to do. This is the key bit. We've looked at kind of issues within football and the financial flow of football. Now, one club that gets relegated from the Premier League earns £55 million for that privilege to get relegated from the Premier League. That is more than every club in the 1 and League 2 to 48 clubs that the Premier League. So 55 million quid relegated, less than that for 48 clubs in the 1 and League 2 and National League. So that's what we're looking at. So that is obviously not representative of what can be, how we can change. So our principle is that we need to look at redistributing the parachute payments. But that doesn't mean just giving it away. We need to incentivize clubs to behave well. We need to incentivize clubs to look at becoming sustainable and cherishing the heritage and traditions of our clubs. We don't want Bury or a Macclesfield to just wipe off the map overnight. But we want clubs to be there for the long term. We want clubs to be able to feel there is, and that's what I said earlier, we want every fan to put on that shirt in the morning, proud of everything that stands in it. So what we're looking at is developing, promoting the sustainability index, which is one of the great ideas that come through Fair Game clubs. Sustainability index, we look at awarding clubs on a category status idea. So imagine that every club is rated from category 1 to 4. And depending on how high a category you get more money distributed to you on that level, on the redistributed parachute payments. So we judge on 4 criteria. 4 criteria there, which you can see behind John's head, are equality standards, fan engagement, financial sustainability, and good governance. And our manifesto goes into depth about what exactly that means. And study that. So we asked our experts to really spell that out. They've done a great job of doing exactly what that means. So that's how we look at not only redistributing money, but encouraging, incentivizing clubs to become something that every fan is proud of, and that the future will carry up to everyone.
People are
joining in on Zoom and saying they can't hear very well. Sorry, is that hopefully everyone's now saying that's better.
Now let us know.
So that's the major thing, I think, for us is to look at this index and to really look at how we can make that happen. That's the one big call we've got. It would be transformation for clubs that are doing in the National League, £100,000 being getting this level for clubs in League 1, League 2, obviously a little bit more to that's how we split it. But it would be something that would make clubs like this one sustainable. I can look around the room and think of other clubs that would benefit hugely from this. And you'd have future that would be one that was part of the fan, really cherishing fan, personal communities that they were operating. That is the route to sustainability. That is the route to really achieving fundamentally. I'll stop there and let Christine go on to explain. There are other elements in the manifesto that obviously big things that we can do.
Right. So sustainability index is not through is the key point of manifesto, but there are other elements to it. We're obviously looking at new rules, stronger rules in place, new owners and directors test to address some issues, criminality, transparency, ensure people running clubs have the integrity and skills to manage to a high standard. I've worked with the University of Portsmouth, where our partnership with the Portsmouth Football Club have the dubious one of being the only club anything wild topic, and we have two of their owners in prison. So, you know, not ideal, right? So that's one element. We're also looking to restructure the FA. There's lots of debate on how that's possible. The abolition of the creditor rule is another thing that came through from clubs. And then obviously we looked at how you set up an independent regulator. Tracy Crouch was clear in the report that, you know, an independent regulator is probably the solution. And we looked at how this would actually set up practice and pulling together experts from various aspects, forward of maximum level, created by legislation, because it needs to be a regulator teeth. It's not good enough just saying, okay, we've got a regulator, all good guys, and then nothing actually changes. So it needs to be like government. We want a mixed skill set, so you need people who actually do the things that they're supposed to do. It's no good just having on there because that's, you know they're all part of the board. Let's all bring the same people in together, right? You need people who actually have the skills to monitor and control and do the things like you need to. And then operating a hybrid model. So we're looking at taking the best elements of what's happening now with the financial services sector, which I used to work in. Since they brought in a decent regulator, there's been quite a lot of change in the industry. You know, it's still not perfect, but there's been a lot of change combined with stuff that's already working. So parts of the academy structure and how that is kind of worked and simple to understand, putting the two together to enable clubs to understand what is required of them. It's not just about being able to do so, it's about being active as well. Not, oh no, listen. Right. Obviously, protection of clubs' heritage and traditions, that's what all fans want, right? We've got one of our clubs, it's Seabury, so name, nickname, colours, badge, that's obviously an issue at the moment, right? Things like that. And then on the other hand, leaving the geographical location connected to the club's name, well, we're all here, right? That's quite a clear one there, right?
Okay, so thank you very much for that, Christine. I will speak very loudly to this microphone now. So we're looking at a new financial structure. So one of the things we want to look at, so at the moment, Premier League gives 14% of TV revenues to outside of the Premier League. 10% of that goes to the clubs who have parachute payments. 4% goes to everybody else. We want to see that upped, and we've been speaking with the EFL about this over time. And our idea is 25%. That's what it was pre-Sky. So it's not like we're thinking something radical, something we do. We're just going back to what it used to be. That would be a massive, massive difference. On the sustainability index, and that be distributed funds, we want to see around 80% of that go towards capital X projects, community projects, and that's about embedding the long-term sustainability of the club. The other 20% of the attitude, but 80% to really make sure that we're looking for something that means that club's there for the long haul. It's part of that community we push on. We also salary caps. Salary caps were hugely popular in League One and League Two, National League, and obviously there were issues with that. We support the idea of the salary cap. Very slightly per division. Again, it's spelled out in the manifesto about how we actually want to do that. Relegation clauses, they exist in some clubs, but they're not universal. We want to look at making that universal, making sure that there's an element of consistency about it. And the last one is one that came back through from the clubs when we were talking about it, and it's looking at how the payment of agents and how that works. It's something we've been looking at still. To be honest, we're exploring that a bit more, but at the moment, the amount of money that's paid by clubs to agents is something that we need to look at ultimately towards the end of that process, because you can have an agent representing a club and a player, and that's obviously something that is leads to huge issues going forward. So that's something that we're very keen to look at as well. Those are all the elements of our manifesto. There are huge things. The big thing to say is that sustainability index is that element of bringing it all together and trying to encourage and incentivize clubs. I think we've got to 1 o'clock. We should be may well have and join us soon. I can't see it. Just be checking on that.
What's that?
Lovely technicality for that. It's waiting for him to join us live from Manchester. Obviously, being mayor of a big city, still here at the anyway.
Picking up on one or two of the questions.
Yeah.
And the question was asked about, I think there's only one EFL club that was listed. We will break off the advantage there. Only one EFL club is listed, no Premier League club. So what is the reaction been? Have you had any response from any Premier League club?
So we've been talking districts of 3 different Premier League clubs, which I can't name because they're conversations. One of them has a very supportive chair. That person is trying to work with the board to see whether they can potentially come on board. Another one is actually one of the clubs from the Big Six, and their executive is very supportive. But it's a conversation they're still having ahead. I'll probably have people running around trying to push the Big Six. That person could probably be. So that's where we are. And another one is connected with one of our advisors. So we're having good conversations with it as well. So there is that. I think the thing with it is we need to be brave. And we need to look at these Premier League clubs thinking, actually, this is the future of football. You can make a fundamental difference if you're brave enough to do something issue that puts community, that puts sustainability at the forefront. Because it will make such a difference to all these clubs. We're not just about the Big Six in football in this country. Fair Games Manifesto basically covers 250 clubs. We've talked about all the kind of semi-professional professional clubs in the West. Those are massive amounts of clubs with massive amount of history and traditions, and that's really what we want to support. And we want to see a Premier League club step up, back us, but they have to be brave. So we asked them to be brave today. We asked them, they know where I am, they know where my website, they know where the website is. They're probably connected with loads of big people, advisors, and other clubs here. They need to be brave and do that. And that's what we hope they can do. And lead something that would be revolutionary in football, and actually make sure that we don't have a Borough, we don't have a Manchester, we don't have Cardiff City playing in Bedford and the Bluebirds, we don't have Hull City being Hull Tigers without permission, we don't have owners that end up in jail. That sort of stuff. That's the things we need to look at. And that's where we are.
The Again, while we're still waiting for Andy Burning, this is a question from Art Walker. Said, can someone explain the steps required, the pathway to getting these plans implemented?
Again, I mean, we've been having lots of conversations with government, and what we're looking at is we've got trace practice review. That's expected to be announced report end of October. We've been speaking with her advisors to look at how we can release that report. And obviously, there's lots of colleagues and friends from other organisations, as you've seen, look back in today in the Sheffield group, 10 experts around 55 Richard Claiborne today. In the room is also the Supporters Association, which we've been talking with all the time. We're very much involved with what they're doing and the work they do. It's about bringing those organisations together to really make a fundamental difference. So that's one big key. Beyond that, then it's about getting legislation where it's needed. So what we've got with our experts now, we're looking at what needs to be primary legislation, secondary legislation, what just tweaks to existing processes to try and make it as easy as possible, as much as what we as proposing actually become reality. That's what we've always been about. It's not about just making stuff. It's about developing long-term, realistic solutions using the experts to analyse that and using political advocacy skills to find out how we can actually do that, working with partners as much as possible. It's that collaboration. So that working together to try and make a real difference.
We'll go to Andy Burning as soon as I get word on his way. I'm sure he won't be too not there yet. So just give us a shout, give us a wave to be there. Just here, one thing that was raised in your part of the presentation about getting rid of the football creditors. That might sound like one strange thing perhaps to people that are fully involved in this. Why is that particular point?
So coming to me again.
Yeah, this is so good.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for that. The creditors rule is an interesting one, and actually some other experts are going to bring no better than me about it. What it effectively does is it means you get preferential treatment as a creditor, which means that if you were the fund lapses happen to be the local bank that's owing extra money, or the kind of the person that's maybe does the deliveries, or the person that fixes lights, or the electrician, all that sort of stuff, don't get that kind of beneficial status, which means the local community can suffer, the local businesses suffer when the fund goes under. And that's by doing that, what we're trying to do is encouraging clubs to be more solvent and encouraging clubs to actually look at realising the influence of the local community. Again, it's about local communities feeling faith in that football club and be able to invest in football. It means that football no longer appears to be less likely to appear to be that risky business than it can appear to be at the moment. That's what it's trying to tackle. That's where it came through from. Again, it was one of the thoughts that came through from our clubs. I know they're thinking about this one.
Anybody put your hand up if you want to ask a question in the room? Yes, sir, go on. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. No, thanks. Peaches onwards. Yes, yeah. I say first how much you love it. Very, very. Richard, thank you. We'll just break off there. I'm sure we'll get to your question before too long, but I think Austin may be able to hear now from the of Greater Manchester. I've certainly seen on my screen. Yeah, football fan. We're just seeing if we can get it up on the big screen. But and then you hear it. He's on mute. And they can start off on mute, please.
I think you're talking to me. The sound's not great.
Very good with readers. We're just trying to get you unmuted, Andy.
So I'm struggling to hear the question. I'm sorry, but it's good to be with you all, by the way.
They said the TV's on full volume. I don't know. No, it's not.
Andy, can you hear us speaking through our Andy?
Yeah, I can hear you. When it's quiet, I can hear some. Go on, just ask me again. Let's see if I can hear now.
Andy, go ahead.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I just saw a message come up from Niall, I think, there saying, invited me to say a few words. Shall I do that? Hopefully you can all hear me in the room. So if I just speak for a few minutes, I'm really, great to join you actually. And I just want to thank everybody involved with the Fair Game campaign. And I know it's the manifesto launch today, and I'll say something about that in a second. I've been involved with the group led by David Bernstein as well. And I think what this shows is there's just a growing consensus amongst everybody that this is a moment for change in English football. I was involved years ago with the football task force. I was the person who was kind of the driving force behind it going back to the late 90s. I would defy anybody in English football to say that the challenges that we have in the game today were not predicted, because they were predicted. The increasing and unregulated commercialization of the game was increasingly threatening the integrity of competition and the cohesiveness, if you like, of English football. All of that was predicted back then. But back then, I can remember the voices saying, it's all fine, we don't need any more regulation. Football has been good at fighting off these kind of attempts at change in the past. But I feel at the moment there's just a groundswell of people coming from all different quarters, actually, that change is needed. And I think what sets your initiative apart is the fact that it's so club driven, 23 values-driven clubs across England and Wales. Obviously with lots of expert support behind you as well, and cross-party support from politicians. I think it's great that you've managed to pull that together. And I think the manifesto that you've developed is just entirely reasonable and should be a basic common ground, really, for anybody who cares about the future of English football. We've allowed our game to be sort of, if you like, too open to the whims of the market on the global market. Everything to be bought and sold, and we've got to get back to a kind of view of protecting the best interests of our game, being open to improvement and outward, inward investment, of course, all of those things, but at the same time making sure that we protect these great clubs of ours for future generations. That notion of a sustainability index seems to me to be, unanswerable. Who could argue against that? We've had a situation in the last year. If I just talk about Greater Manchester for a moment, we've had a situation where we've potentially been losing clubs at either end. Obviously, we've seen the threat to Wigan Athletic. We've seen what's been happening at Bolton Wanderers. There are challenges at Oldham Athletic at the moment. But the big example is, of course, Bury. That's the salutary lesson here. Gig Lane is a monument to failed football regulation and governance. It's the proof that the status quo hasn't worked. And I think, knowing the pain that that's caused Bury fans, I think we all owe it to them to say never again should we allow an English, a huge name in English football, an FA Cup winner, literally to be ripped out of a community in the way that club has been. So the sustainability index, yes, but then the independent regulator. The situation that we have a league regulating clubs where it's in the interest of the league, if you like, to try and bring in any type of ownership and almost kind of open the door to whoever. Well, it just hasn't worked. They have not implemented rules that are strong enough to ensure the fitness of people to come in to run these clubs, the propriety of potential owners, and history has shown us that those structures do not provide sufficient protection. So, I fully support an independent regulator backed by legislation, appointed by government. I think the time has come, and the time has come for clubs themselves to step forward and say, this is what we need. And that's why your initiative is so important. If I could just say something about protection of a club's heritage and traditions, I think this is a thing that matters massively to me. I was involved in the setting up of Supporters Direct many years ago, and this was trying to do the same thing by obviously increasing supporter ownership of football clubs. And many of your members obviously are very where they are today because of some of the support that Supporters Direct provided. I'm thinking of Cambridge United, particularly AFC Wimbledon, of course, Chester FC. We did do something to change the way clubs were run, and we did do something to improve supporter ownership. But actually, can we get to our dream of a German model in England through that route by change from the bottom up? Well, if we can, it's going to take many, many years, isn't it? The 50+1 idea is great in theory, but how can it be delivered in practice? That's why I think the notion of giving fans a final say on any proposed changes to the club's crown jewels, be it the name, the nickname, the colours, the badge, the geographical location in which the club plays, and doing that through, I would say, a 50+1 arrangement of the season ticket holder base, for instance, making sure that there is that guarantee, if you like, on the traditions of the club, and that no change, fundamental change, can be made without it. So that would have protected clubs that we've lost at the lower end of the game, but it would also have stopped the Super League situation. And obviously we have seen here how close we came against Manchester to losing some of our biggest names to English football. So I'll probably leave it there. I'm sure you want to hear from other speakers. All of that won't work alone unless we've also got an English football system that recycles the benefits of running an English pyramid right the way down that pyramid. More Premier League revenue coming out of the top of the game and coming back into all levels of the pyramid seems to me to be essential if we're to preserve the health of this game that we all love so much. Reforming some of the parachute payments and the other things that have caused an inflationary effect in parts of the Football League. All of that needs to be looked at, and massive changes to the way clubs pay agents. It's all there. Your manifesto, if implemented, I think would have the support, I would say, of 90% plus of football supporters in this country. It doesn't in any way drag the English game down. It just secures it for future generations. It secures our clubs. It deserves our support. I'm here to give my support to your manifesto. We need to make this a moment of unstoppable momentum for change in English football. As I say, 30 years ago, I heard those voices on the task force saying, don't do anything, it's all fine. nothing to worry about. Well, that hasn't been the case because we've seen what's happened to English football since then. Left to market forces, we will be left with a game that doesn't work further down the line. It's time for change. Fair game in the wider interests of football. Absolutely, you've got my full support. I'm pretty confident. I'm speaking for pretty much all of Greater Manchester in backing what you're saying. People are behind it. Good luck to you all, and thank you for letting me speak at this launch event today.
Should we let Andy go? The people here can't hear it. It's a very good contribution. I presume it could be a load of that. Yeah, so we can ask Andy for his notes, see if they can circulate. That would be brilliant. I know people have also been asking on Zoom if they could have access to the slides that you presented earlier as well. I think it's a good point actually to pick up on what Andy said. For those of you who didn't hear, by the way, Andy just saying that he gives his full backing to the manifesto. We believe that it's not sensible to support the manifesto if given the choice that he has the backing of Greater Manchester for that. So the key line that I would very FC is a monument to the failure of football regulation governance. Independent regulator backed by legislation appointed by government. Just picking up on what Andy said and what Richard Faulkner said earlier there, talking about the ability of this organisation to dovetail with the work of others who've got similar interests like the beautiful game.
I mean, we've been talking with David Bernstein, had quite a number of conversations with him, and Richard Faulkner, who is in the room, was talking about that as well just now. That's something that we would be looking to develop forward with that. And that is, again, I think various groups are all coming together, and we certainly believe that that is the way forward for us to coalesce. We agree on 99% of things. There's very, very little difference between us. And it's about that momentum. It's about looking at how we can reach those right peaks, push those right buttons, and make sure that politicians, now in their hands, politicians really listen to what we're saying and are brave enough to legislate, are brave enough to make that difference that needs to happen. Because as Andy Burnham just said, he's been here before. We're different because it's never been clubs have never come together before. And that's what's great about us. It's great, and we all support all those experts together, which is good. But these kind of things have been, and it's struggled. I know I've spoken to some of the experts that are in the room here over time, and there's certainly a couple that I think they've got unfinished business and what's happened before. And I really want to help take that on that journey to make sure that what they set out to do actually happens. And this time you've got backing of some good, like-minded clubs, value-driven clubs that want to push that forward as well. If we can get those politicians back in, long working with the support groups from the FSA, that is a group, it's a collective, make a real fundamental difference and actually finally deliver a game worthy the name of the national game.
Well, this is John. It's really interesting during the Euros, the power of players taking the knee in the face, initially anyway, of some hostility. They stuck to their guns, they continued to take the knee, and that sent out a very powerful message. I just wonder if you think there's a role here both for current players and indeed for former players like yourself to
I think it's the great thing about this is all stakeholders come together because it can't be one individual group, and it's back to Richard's point, is coalescing around this common theme, which is to make the game better, needs everybody to have the message amplified that we've been here before. It's not rocket science. Nothing that we've said here in the manifesto is anything that any reasonable person wouldn't agree with. Andy said it, we've said it, everybody in the room says it. It's about making sure that we hold, I think, the MPs and the government to sort of account in the way that that message is unified. The message by the players is always scrutinised more than any other message. I think it's great that that's shone through. It always shows us the power of people like Marcus Rashford and Raheem Sterling, all those individuals that use their platform to great cause, to great use, with great purpose. And I just spoke to Brian Dean this week, who I was at Leeds with as a youngster. Brian's involved with Richard Caborn and the Sheffield group have come on board. Obviously David Bernstein's group, Beautiful Game, and Gary Neville. The more that we have a unified voice, the more that consensus is built between everybody within the game, the better it is. Current players, former players, an essential part of that process, I think, because we have that privileged platform to be able to get our message across better often than clubs or academics or experts or whoever it may be. And therefore, they have a great responsibility, I think, within the game. And I would urge all former players and current players to really step forward and lend their support to this initiative, this manifesto, because it's in their interest. It's in their interest to have a better game, because we're all parents. We all have the next generation. We all have that interest where we are privileged, incredibly privileged to have earned the money we've earned from the game, to have been put on that pedestal, to be lauded by those people that come to watch us play week in, week out. So we want a game that is, unified between the top and the bottom. I've done a lot of work with the PFA and with FIFPro, the International Players Union, and I think the public get this perception that the players are in this sort of overpaid and they see the top little part of it. When you talk to FIFPro and you hear the stories of Interpol and organised crime and clubs not paying, the failures of contracts and implementation of rights across the world, we are a beacon in this country, but even in here, when we know the clubs at the lower levels, the national leagues, the pyramid, essential work that this manifesto underpins to get the game back to those principles and values that we've seen on the presentation. It's making sure that everybody stands together for the greater good, because it's where the England players, so many of the England players have all been at the lower levels. They've all been out on loan. They've started their journey in non-league football. They will all say that they stand in solidarity together. And so that's a long-winded answer, sorry. But it's essential that current players, former players do come together and join forces with Fair Game and other bodies that are basically having exactly the same issue.
Time for one more question from the room. Anybody wants to raise their hand? Yeah, come on. Yes, one on Gregory. I'm just tired. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, well, we've got actually quite a few, we're sort of looking at this. In fact, we've got a few of the experts that are actually looking at the effects of competition on demand and how that affects, and how what we're suggesting could potentially, how it would impact pyramids. And is what you don't want is to reduce competition. Right? So I completely agree with you, but it is something we are looking at the moment. We haven't stopped. This isn't the end. We are still working.
So I could just add tiny to that in, and then we should wrap up. On that, one of the big things we'll be looking at is that fair game is looking at 200 clubs. And for a long time, we've been fixated about the 6 clubs that go up and down the Premier League. And our analysis in some of the early thoughts has been that actually parachute payments already outlived their usefulness in a lot of different ways. But let's remember there are 194 other clubs that we're looking at, rather than just those 6. And the transformation, the difference that money would make towards those 194 other clubs is huge. That should never be underestimated. So we need to think about going beyond that. What it would also mean is that the clubs that have the potential to get into the Premier League grow. You encourage well-run clubs to have that chance of getting their mow in the sun, if you like. But then how they use that money to invest and develop themselves, that would be beneficial for the clubs that have run well and look at that sustainability, how to do that. That's where I think we need to change this argument. We shouldn't just be focusing on just on those 6 clubs. We should be focusing on the other 194, whatever it is. That's what we need to be looking at. That's where we make such a difference. And when we look at our sustainability, let's say, let's ring-fence a large section of that money into developing new stadiums, to developing better fan facilities, to developing community programs. That is what's going to make people want to come connected to their club. That's what's going to create that connection. It means that club has got a much better chance of surviving long term and will be sustainable. Because an owner could go, and if an owner walks out of that club, what's left? You need to make sure that club can survive changing ownership or an owner disappearing. And that's where we need to get to. Because that's ultimately, we're all custodians of great institutions. That's what we need to think ourselves as. I look around the room, there's some great CEOs, there's some great directors in here, but I'm sure their owners don't necessarily want to be putting their money in the pocket all the time. And this changes that way of thinking. It rewards these clubs. I'm looking at several of the clubs in this room that I know are value driven. I've had great conversations with, and I think that's the future, and that's what fair game is about. We're looking at a different way of football operates. So I think it would be really fundamental.
Yeah, just very quickly on that. Premier League has been lots of
I'll let you wrap up, Adrian.
I'm going to let you wrap up now. Well, it's good. You want to wrap up or shall I wrap up?
You wrap up.
It's been fantastic. I'm sorry about the technical issues, but Andy Burnham was a great voice to have, really showing the political clash of this movement. And I think it is a movement. It's a movement in a long time in the making. It's been one that I think started with the fancy explosion of the late 80s, the Football Association, and with the fantastic mentioned by Richard there of tax force direct, and with the creation of so many of these funding clubs who now are part of their page. So at times the weight of what's against us may seem huge and it may seem oppressive, but if we look at what has already been achieved over many years working together, we know that we can make progress, that things can be improved. We may have our toughest battles ahead. This is definitely one of these work points. This is a pivotal moment in the future. Let's go on and fight it. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.
We'll be organising a photo stunt outside in a minute, and there is lunch behind you, so do grab some food, and we'll have a chance to chat and talk. We're here for another hour or so. So those of you will be tapping you on the shoulder in a minute to get some shirts on, and some of the club representatives, there'll be people come around to interview you separately so that we can upload it for your club website. Thank you very much. Thank you.